So here's something interesting. South Africa's population has now passed 63 million people. This is according to the latest mid-year population estimates for 2024. These were released by Stats SA. But even though we know this number, there's a number that we still don't know about. It's the number of illegal or undocumented immigrants that are in the country. That number is crucial for South Africa. It's crucial in us starting to address and unpack the illegal immigration problem that persists in our country. But the departments that are tasked with compiling these numbers aren't willing to give us much clarity, nor does it look like this is seemingly going to change. There's a socio-economic cost to illegal or undocumented migrants, and we need to start understanding that above all of the noise. Now, you middle-class person, middle-class South African who's watching this, I want you to leave your feelings at the door for just the next couple of minutes, and I just want you to listen. Then we can engage more freely with some of the facts that I'm going to present to you. Okay, let's do this. So in this piece, we're going to look and try to go down the rabbit hole around illegal and undocumented immigration in the country, amongst other things. But we need to look at population first. Now, in order to try work out how many illegal immigrants are in South Africa, officially and unofficially, we're also going to get to understand Zimbabwe's citizenship exemption permits and also the results of the Department of Labor's raids. And we're also going to get to understand how much South Africa is spending on deportations and what we would need to spend to build a wall. Slow down, Trumpians. This one's not for you. Because currently, there really isn't a wall. And again, yes, I know this is a complex issue, but if we don't get ahead of this conversation and start having it and at least trying to find solutions, the problem will force us to have conversations during a time of crisis. Okay, with that said, let's get going. South Africa's population has grown by approximately 835,000 individuals, marking a 1.33% increase from July of 2023 to July of 2024. What the data further reveals is that just over half of the population is female. The Kandas of the Grootmans, the Mbogodos, the Queens, they outnumber us, gents. This is just fact. Provincially, Gauteng remains the most populous province with nearly 16 million residents. KwaZulu-Natal follows with a population of 12.3 million people. Together, these two provinces account for about 45% of South Africa's total population. In contrast, the Northern Cape is the least populated province, housing just under 1.4 million people. Now, when you look a little bit deeper, 27.5% of South Africa's population is said to be aged younger than 15 years, at 16.8 million people, and about 9.7% or 6.13 million people are 60 years or older. Thirdly, the decrease in infant mortality rate from an estimated 57 infant deaths per 1,000 live births in 2022 to 22.9% per 1,000 live births in 2024 has been a direct impact on the improvement of the life expectancy at birth in South Africa. These indices reflect improvements in the overall health and living conditions of the population. Now that we have the overall official numbers, I want us to switch things up a bit and get to what I presented at the beginning of this video. Now, when it comes to the population, there's another number or another conversation that lingers. The conversation is around how many foreigners are in South Africa and how many of those people are legal or illegal. Now, over the years, multiple studies have tried to extrapolate this figure, but it seems to me that finding out the exact or even the real approximate number isn't in the best interests of various parties, as this would likely put in full view an issue that's so divisive in South Africa that it's a key talking point for political parties like Action SA. In fact, circa November 2020, a tweet by Herman Mashaba, leader of Action SA and ex-mayor of the city of Johannesburg, he claimed that there were 15 million undocumented immigrants in South Africa. Okay, this number was rather hyperbolic, to even say the least, but maybe he was doing something here. He was trying to elicit a reaction from all of us, all of the citizens, and he actually succeeded in this. Now, if the number is not 15 million, then what is the number? Now, estimating the number of foreign-born people living in South Africa is difficult. Census data provides some indication of migrant numbers, but does not include enough information to estimate their movement over time and also whether or not the immigrants who participate in these surveys might be hesitant to actually say where they were born. Data from the 2011 census indicated that there were an estimated 2.2 million foreign-born people living in the country. By 2022, this figure had increased to 3.96 million people. This is according to the Chief Director of Demography and Population Statistics at Stats SA. This is around 6.5% of the country's population, and this number includes all foreign-born people regardless of legal status, legal or illegal. Okay, so there you have it. I guess the video can end right about here. Wait. Not that easy. So that 3.96 million denotes foreign-born people counted in the survey. Also, how many of those people do you think would answer questions about whether or not they're in South Africa legally or illegally without knowing what the ramifications would be? That's problem number one. All of this is likely even political, but I could be wrong. My worry is that with this ambiguity, the ground becomes fertile to stoke the very tensions that people are trying to basically move back away from. And all of this is based on them not having the correct information. Now, that is exactly the issue that I find with a lot of these numbers. There doesn't seem to be a conversation around how we can begin to even estimate the correct data around how many illegals there are in South Africa. Dare I say, we might just maybe piss off some or other NGO. Anyways, there's a need to want to balance our international standing in South Africa. There's a need to look good or to want to look good when we know that we have an immigration problem. But we as a country still want to be seen as through and through humanitarians, and we want to sign as many documents as we can. Yes, the African togetherness and brotherhood is important, but so is sovereign right. So is the right and the ability of a country to choose who and why people can come into its borders. Maybe let me know in the comments. Is this immigration issue even a topic that you think should be a priority for a government, for our government right now? Would you like to know the number of illegal foreigners in South Africa, or are people just making a lot of noise about something that's pretty much small to you? I want you to jump into the comments and let us know. Frankly speaking, my view is that how can you even start to think of fixing an issue? How can you even know if it is an issue if you don't know how bad or how good it is? So if these are the numbers of the people who are documented, legal people that are already counted in the population, then how many of the other people are illegal? Although conclusive latest data is not available, in the past, Stats SA has estimated that undocumented immigration stock has increased by over 100% between 2011 and 2015 to between 500,000 and 1 million people. And this is a number that they've roughly stuck to. And there seem to be no new updates. It's 2024. It's now 9 years later. We don't have clear numbers. In fact, if you have the estimated illegal immigrant number, maybe you should drop it in the comments and let us know. Also tag your sources. Even if you were thinking of Googling it, there's so many conflicting articles that when you realize that you can't find the exact number, you start to think to yourself, maybe these are the ingredients of a conspiracy. But I don't want to go down that route. The thing is that before the introduction of the Dispensation of Zimbabweans project in 2010, annual deportations in South Africa exceeded 250,000 people. Okay, quickly, let me explain what the Zimbabwe Dispensation Project actually was. So in April of 2009-10, the Cabinet of the Republic of South Africa approved the Dispensation of Zimbabweans Project, or the DZP. This allowed holders of the special permit to work, conduct business, and study in South Africa. The objectives then were to regularize Zimbabweans residing in South Africa illegally. It was also to curb the deportation of Zimbabweans who were in South Africa illegally. It was there also to reduce the pressure of the asylum seeker programs as well as the refugee regimes. And it was there to provide amnesty to Zimbabweans who had obtained South African documents fraudulently. This was a significant gesture of support and solidarity with our neighboring country, Zimbabwe. This was in response to the large number of Zimbabweans residing in South Africa illegally at the time due to political and economic instability that was happening there. Those unstable conditions have since subsided. But South Africa is still seen as an economic hub by many neighboring SADC citizens outside of Zimbabwe, and also a land for positive economic possibility. Now, in recent times, there's been calls to scrap these types of permits. Remember that the DZP program allowed for Zimbabweans with clean criminal records and evidence of employment in South Africa to apply. As a consequence, the lists of holders of DZP permits followed over the years by the Zimbabwe Special Permit, the ZEP, the exemption permit. These are now up to date, proving that the efficacy of the amnesty program worked. But as the times have been changing, the conversation around foreigners has also been changing. It's been changing around the need to bring in skilled people into the country. Now, what stuck out to me when I was doing a little bit of this research, specifically on Zimbabwe, there are roughly 176,000 ZEP holders in South Africa, and only 20% of these holders are qualified to apply for mainstream visas such as critical skills, work visas, spousal-based visas, or relative visas. This is based off just a dipstick analysis. Many would then ask, is this country gaining from a program like this? Okay, maybe let's move on. What is South Africa actually spending on deportations? Between January of 2012 and December of 2016, 369,000 migrants were deported. Nationals from Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and Lesotho made up 88% of these deportations. And in recent times, a written response from Home Affairs Minister Leon Schreiber revealed that 83,000 plus illegal foreigners were deported during the period of January 2022 until October of 2024, when the question was asked in Parliament. Now, in his answer, Minister Schreiber went on to say that the number of pending deportations at Lindela Holding Facility and across the country stood at 2,483. He further disclosed that the department spent close to 200 million rand on deportations since 2022. But I want to give you a perspective of the same facility when it was run by Bosasa before 2022. Now, from a document that highlights the spending review of the Lindela Detention Center, I'll actually attach it below in the description. Now, over this period of 5 years, from 2017 till 2022, the center accommodated around 76,400 detainees at a combined cost of 822.9 million rand over the term. This amount equaled around 10,000 rand spent on each detainee over the period. Note that detainees are always in and out, so it's not like they're in jail. Now, all of this came at a cost of 450,000 rand per day over the 5 years to keep this Lindela detention facility operating. On the other side, 66,000 plus detainees were deported over the 5 years at an 87.5% deportation rate. Okay, this was before 2022. So what's the story now? Now, the recent numbers around deportations and the costs of holding detainees has sparked a lot of criticism from members of parliament, with many of them stating that they are criticizing the government for spending such a significant sum while deporting only 83,000 plus individuals, a figure that is seen as significantly lower than the previous decade's average of 133,000 deportations per year. So yeah, even though South Africa's government doesn't want to say how many illegal immigrants are in the country, the government is officially deporting less and less people by its own statistics. Only 19,750 illegal immigrants were deported in the last 5 months, despite the average cost of each deportation costing 2,700 rand per individual. Now, by using these numbers, if there's even 1 million people that are in South Africa illegally, it would cost around 2.7 billion rand to deport all of them. Now, if that number were to magically move and be, let's say, 5 million, it would cost us around 13 billion rand to do the same thing. Obviously, this last number isn't official. I'm just rounding off, trying to make you to understand. I just don't think that we have those type of funds as a country. At least those aren't freely available for us to just work with. And there also just doesn't seem to be enough political will to admit that we have a problem here. We have a problem. Yes, GNU, I'm looking at you. Now, the other side of this conversation is the complicity of the South African business community, who persists in employing foreigners as they are likely to be less costly than South Africans, low-skilled South Africans, people that need jobs. During September of 2024, the Department of Employment and Labor conducted 2,500 plus compliance raids in the hospitality sector, just only in that sector. This spate of compliance audits was triggered by a lady on TikTok, a lady who worked as a waitress at a restaurant in Menlyn Park. This lady's complaints centered around the requirements that she needed to purchase things like her own uniforms, her own tools of the trade, including things like bottle openers and cigar cutters. Additionally, she stated that there was no basic salary in place and she was required to pay the restaurant's various fees, dubious fees, including things like a portion of her tips and also fixed amounts for the use of runners as well as breakages that might happen. Now, these incidents seem very isolated until you start to ask yourself why these employees are expandable to these employers. When an industry has been doing whatever they want for this long, these are the results. South African employees are undervalued and seen as being too demanding, right? They're too costly, too demanding, they're just a problem. In fact, they're seen as second-class workers who shouldn't be prioritized. This is the other side. This is the other cost of illegal immigrants being granted work here in this country illegally. We need to start having these conversations. Now, following the September raids, the Department of Employment and Labor reported on the 1st of October on their joint blitz and inspections and the raids that happened on businesses and what the results of those yielded. The department's findings suggest that at least 49% of the 2,600 plus inspections conducted were non-compliant, with at least 81 foreign nationals who did not have the correct documentation. These people were arrested. To be clear, there has and there will never be a conversation around legal immigrants who add to the country. The issues have always and will always be around illegal immigrants who add an often unseen cost to the state coffers. Now, normally, what will happen is that after an illegal person gets arrested, the Department of Home Affairs starts their processes. And this will include, amongst other things, ensuring that it's not only the workers who get arrested, but also the employers, as they are the ones that are literally breaking the law. However, I have a problem with some of these fines. Only 2,500 Rand for employing an illegal worker. That's actually crazy to me. What then is the cost of a South African not being employed? We should ask ourselves that question. Now, looking ahead, it's been revealed that the Department of Labor now plans to expand its inspectorate capacity from 2,000 people to 20,000 inspectors over the next 3 years to try and get more data, more inspections done. This will enhance the department's ability to conduct the frequency as well as thorough inspections across the entire country. This is just one of the actions that the government can take. But then again, that's not a core fix to this entire problem. Penalties for businesses that infringe could also be changed to be about 10% of their annual revenues. But then what if we did the Trumpian thing? What if we built a wall?
We're going to build the wall. We have no choice. We have no choice.
No. This isn't a Trump conversation. Don't be distracted. Stay with me here. We're almost there. Well, at least what estimates are saying. That could cost around 5 billion Rand to secure the most porous parts of the South African border. This is just in the short term, but not necessarily even the whole thing. We've also got to look at previous attempts to build such a wall. Attempts under the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure under Patricia de Lille. They just seem to not be equipped to undertake such a project, judging from how they spent the first 40 million Rand during lockdowns. I use the words equipped lightly. Go Google for yourself. At present, the 5 billion Rand estimate border fence funds would have the insane task of covering an approximate 700 kilometers of the SA-Zimbabwe border, approximately 600 kilometers of the Lesotho-South Africa border, and about 600 kilometers of the South Africa's land borders with Eswatini and Mozambique. A total of 1,900 kilometers at 2.6 million Rand per kilometer. But what type of fence could that possibly buy us? I don't know. Honestly, Andaz. In fact, the movement of illegal cars has even necessitated a concrete border that is underway to curb the movement of stolen and hijacked South African cars to Mozambique. The need for a border is not just for people. It's there to police things like crimes and also to control the sovereign territory of South Africa. We need more oversight on this border issue. The reality is that currently South Africans are footing the bill indirectly and directly for illegal immigrants. Through more social instability due to tensions, through the cost of these deportations, through extra costs in basic services like health, through increased crime levels, through devaluation of our passports, through less work opportunities for low-skilled South African workers. through young, low-skilled youth not getting an opportunity to even be considered for work. And that's just some of the costs. There are a lot of things going wrong in South Africa, but there are things that need immediate attention. And I believe that this is one of them. It doesn't need to wait for other issues to be sorted out. It can be sorted out almost immediately. This is our current state of affairs, and we need to admit it. And whichever party decides to fix it or make it an issue will surely capture the voters of the growing base of people who think that this is important. Maybe only then will there be efforts to finally start to fix this illegal immigration issue. The reality is that the longer we don't fix the solidity of our borders, the longer that some of our neighbors will take to sort out their own problems. Because at the slightest inconvenience, their citizens basically come here. That's just not sustainable for us. The other side of this humanitarian aspect of South Africa having to foot all of these socio-economic bills related to illegal immigrants must surely be us looking at the costs that the average South African is now burdened with, the extra cost. Isn't that something worth fighting for? Aren't South Africans worth protecting before anyone else? Helen Suzman Foundation, I'm talking to you. Maybe you can answer me. To conclude, I want to read you verbatim a tweet from Hopewell Chinono, as a Zimbabwean journalist, on his take on the open borders conversation. And it goes something like this. Open borders which allow Africans to freely enter, live, and work in any African country will remain unattainable until we achieve robust economies across the African continent, similar to those in places like the European Union. Anyone claiming that open borders are feasible without establishing a baseline standard for African economies is misleading you. Without this, a more developed country like South Africa would bear a disproportionate burden, effectively supporting the rest of the continent. For open borders to be viable, South Africans and others across the continent need to see tangible benefits and opportunities in other African nations too. Implementing open borders would require strong, stable economies and at a certain level of economic integration, similar to what has been achieved within the European Union. Without this foundation, open borders would lead to unsustainable economic imbalance, as disparities between countries would prompt migration towards relatively prosperous economies. This influx would overwhelm South Africa's resources and infrastructure, creating social and economic strain. To make open borders feasible, citizens must see opportunities beyond their own borders. This would facilitate balanced movement and economic exchange, fostering growth and development across the continent without overburdening any single country. Many who advocate for open borders do so as a catchy political slogan, often without examining the data that highlights why it is currently unachievable. Numerous fashion Pan-Africanists call for open borders without addressing the economic barriers or confronting the tyrants responsible for obstructing this vision. Some of these advocates even label dictators like Mnangagwa as Pan-Africanists, despite the fact that such leaders perpetuate the conditions that make open borders unattainable. While the idea of open borders sounds appealing as a political rallying cry, it remains an elusive ideal, forever pursued but never truly within reach unless we tackle the economic issue first. And that's the end of the post. Something to chew on. Anyways, we've reached the end of this video. Thank you for watching up until this point. It means that this issue was really interesting for you. It was also interesting for us to make because we need to find solutions to it. Check out one of these other videos and hopefully they'll be just as interesting and engaging as this one. Cheers.